She notices him before she understands why. The door swings open, cold air rushing in, and the man hesitates just long enough for his wallet to slip from his coat and land near her shoe. Leather on tile. A soft sound. He does not look back. He never looks back. Lena stands there, tray in hand, watching the door close on his silhouette, something tightening in her chest that has nothing to do with money. The shift has been long. Her feet ache. The register is short again, and the clock over the counter says she is already late for the bus that takes her across town. She bends, picks up the wallet, feels its weight, heavier than it should be, and for one quiet second considers doing what everyone else would do, setting it behind the counter, letting fate handle the rest. But she sees his eyes again, not desperate, not careless, just distant, like someone used to walking away. So she runs. Outside, the night smells like rain and gasoline. Her sneakers slap the pavement, and she calls out once, then again, until he finally turns. He listens without interrupting as she explains, breathless, holding the wallet out with both hands. He studies her, not the wallet, as if measuring something invisible. "Thank you," he says, calm, controlled, and takes it without counting what is inside. No tip, no apology, just a nod, a look that lingers half a second longer than necessary, and then he is gone. Back inside, the noise rushes her, plates clatter, a customer snaps for coffee, and her manager reminds her she still owes an extra hour because someone called out. She eats fries standing up, cold and too salty, checks her phone, and sees the overdraft alert she has been avoiding all day. It is nothing dramatic, nothing tragic, just the familiar pressure of being almost okay and knowing almost is fragile. When her shift ends, a black sedan waits outside the diner, engine idling, too clean for the street. The window lowers. The same eyes meet hers. He asks her name. He already knows it. He says there has been a complication and she might be able to help. The way he says help makes her wary, but polite. She tells herself she can listen for 1 minute. If you have ever stopped for a stranger when you were already running late, if you have ever chosen to do the right thing knowing it might cost you, you already know how this feels. And before we go any further, take a second to ask yourself whether you would have run after him too. Now let's return to the main character, Lena, standing under the flickering light, gripping her apron, wondering why a forgotten wallet suddenly feels like the beginning of something she cannot see. She does not know his name, his job, or why his presence feels heavier than the wallet did. But she knows the night has shifted. The bus hisses past without her, and she does not chase it. Instead, she watches the sedan disappear, heart steady, mind racing, aware that whatever comes next will not announce itself loudly. It will arrive the way everything else does in her life, quietly, disguised as another small choice, another moment where she has to decide whether to step forward or stay where she is, safe, unseen, and alone. Somewhere behind glass and steel, a decision is being made that includes her without her consent, but she cannot feel it yet. All she feels is the echo of his pause, the way he listened, the absence of gratitude that felt strangely honest, and the unsettling sense that kindness, once noticed, can become a door you did not mean to open. It is a simple beginning, almost invisible, and that is why it is dangerous. Because once seen, it cannot be unseen, and both of them will have to answer for it. Even if neither of them is ready, even if the cost is more than she can afford. Tonight has already chosen. For them both. Without asking permission. The next morning does not feel dramatic. It feels small and tight, the way mornings do when there is not much room for mistakes. Lena wakes before the alarm because her phone vibrates on the nightstand, another notification from the bank, another reminder that her balance is not what it should be. She lies there for a moment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling of her studio, listening to her neighbors shower through the thin wall, and counts what she has left. Enough for groceries if she skips lunch. Enough for gas if she walks today. Not enough for surprises. She dresses quickly, pulls her hair into a low knot, and leaves. With a granola bar in her pocket instead of breakfast. The diner is already busy when she arrives, a lunch rush that smells like grease and burnt toast, and she slips back into the rhythm that keeps her steady. Refill, smile, apologize, move on. She tells herself last night was nothing. A forgotten wallet. A run. A thank you. People come and go every day. Around noon, her manager asks her to step into the back. There is a man waiting by the register, tall, still, hands relaxed at his sides, as if he owns the space without trying. It takes her a second to recognize him without the coat, without the ring. He looks the same and completely different, like someone who belongs anywhere. He does not smile when he sees her. He inclines his head, polite, precise. "I hope this is not inconvenient," he says, voice low enough that it does not draw attention. He introduces himself as Julian. No last name. He says he needs to speak with her, privately, for a few minutes. Her manager watches, curious, calculating. Lena feels the familiar twist in her stomach, the one that comes when something unexpected threatens the careful balance of her day. They step outside, sunlight harsh after the dim diner, and he hands her a card. Thick paper, clean design, only a name and a number. He explains, briefly, that the wallet was not the issue. The issue is timing. There is a situation he is required to resolve, and her choice last night has placed her in a unique position. He says this without urgency, without apology, like someone stating the weather. Lena asks what kind of situation requires a waitress to get involved. He pauses, just enough to make her notice. He says it would be better explained somewhere quieter. She should say no. She thinks of the bus she will miss again, the groceries she has not bought, the way his eyes did not thank her because he assumed she did not need it. Against her better judgment, she agrees to 10 minutes. The car is waiting, the same black sedan, the interior cool and silent. As they drive, he does not make small talk. He asks if she is comfortable. He asks if she needs water. He does not ask about her life. The building they stop at is all glass and clean. Lines, the kind that makes her straighten her shoulders without realizing it. Inside, everything is quiet, controlled, expensive in ways that do not announce themselves. They sit at a long table. Another man joins them, older, carrying a leather folder. Julian remains standing until Lena sits. Then he sits. This detail stays with her. The older man slides a document across the table, pages clipped, dense with words. Julian explains that he is required, by the terms of an agreement he did not write, to present a spouse within a defined period of time. The words sound unreal, like a problem from someone else's life. Lena laughs once, sharp, because it feels like a mistake. Julian does not react. He explains that the arrangement would be legal, temporary, compensated. She would not be expected to pretend affection, only presence. He says her role would be protected. He says she would be free to decline. The room feels smaller with every sentence. Lena looks at the document, at the spaces for signatures, at the blank lines where names belong. She thinks of her overdraft alert, her cold fries, the bus she missed. She thinks of the way he listened last night, the way he did not try to impress her. She pushes the folder back toward him. She says she needs time. Julian nods once, as if he expected nothing else. He tells her to take the card. He tells her there is no pressure. But when she stands to leave, she realizes something has already shifted. This is no longer about a wallet. This is about a door that has opened quietly, and the knowledge that stepping away will not close it. As she walks back into the noise of the street, the weight in her chest returns, heavier now, not fear exactly, but the awareness that the simplest choices are sometimes the ones that echo the longest, and that whatever she decides next will change the shape of her days in ways she cannot yet measure. Time stretches in the days that follow, not because anything dramatic happens, but because Lena is suddenly aware of how different two worlds can feel even when nothing obvious changes. She keeps working her shifts, pouring coffee, wiping counters, listening to complaints that sound larger than they are, and yet every movement feels slightly off, as if she is standing a few inches outside her own life. Julian does not call. He does not text. The card stays in her pocket, edges softening, his name the only thing on it, quiet and deliberate. She tells herself this is what no pressure looks like. She tells herself she is relieved. At night, she lies awake counting ceiling cracks and thinking about the building of glass, the way the air felt cooler inside, the way he had waited for her to sit before sitting himself. It bothers her more than it should. On the third day, her bus breaks down 3 blocks from home. She walks the rest of the way, shoes rubbing her heels raw, calculating how long she can put off replacing them. When she reaches her apartment, there is an envelope taped to her door, heavy paper again, no return address. Inside is a single page, not a contract, just a schedule, a time, a place, tomorrow. There is no demand attached to it. No threat. Just an assumption that she will show up. She almost laughs. The next afternoon, she stands across the street from the address, a private club she has only seen in movies, members arriving in tailored coats, doors opening without anyone touching them. She checks her phone, the time, her bank balance, and then crosses. Inside, everything is soft and controlled, voices low, movements efficient. Julian is already there. He stands when he sees her, not surprised, as if he had simply continued a conversation paused mid-sentence. He asks if she would like coffee. She says yes. He remembers how she takes it. This should not matter. It does. They sit near a window overlooking the city, traffic far below like something abstract. He explains more this time, not in legal terms, but in outcomes. There are expectations placed on him that are not negotiable. Appearances that must be maintained to secure leverage he needs for reasons he does not share. He does not say family, but she hears it anyway. He does not ask her to agree. He asks what she would need in order to consider it. The question lands heavier than the offer. Lena lists practical things first because they are easier. Housing security, a clear end date, control over her schedule, no public displays she does not consent to. Julian listens. He does not interrupt. He does not negotiate down. He notes each condition as if they are reasonable because to him they are. Then he adds his own. Discretion, reliability, a willingness to be present when required. He does not ask for affection. He does not ask for lies, only omissions. She notices how careful he is with language, how he never frames this as saving her. That might be worse. They talk for an hour. She learns nothing personal about him, only how his mind works, methodical, precise, built around minimizing risk. When she stands to leave, she feels the distance between their lives settle into place, not dramatic, just wide. Outside, the city noise crashes back, and she realizes how insulated the club was, how easy it would be to forget what things cost. She walks 3 blocks before she stops, heart racing, and calls the number on the card. He answers on the second ring. She tells him she will not decide today. She tells him she needs to understand one thing first. Why her? He is quiet long enough that she almost thinks the call dropped. Then he says because she ran after him without knowing who he was, and because she did not ask for anything after. He says people who act that way do not usually want control, and that makes them the least likely to abuse it. The logic is unsettling. She hangs up without agreeing. That night, her manager announces hours will be cut. The following morning, her landlord leaves a message reminding her rent is due. None of this is new. What is new is the knowledge that there is an exit she could take, a clean one, offered without cruelty, and that taking it would bind her to someone whose power she does not yet understand. The imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Julian moves through spaces that bend to him. She navigates ones that push back. He can wait. She cannot. And somewhere in that gap, something begins to form that is not attraction, not fear, but tension, quiet and persistent, like a held breath. When she finally texts him that night, she does not say yes. She says she wants to read every page herself. His reply comes immediately. Of course. I would expect nothing less. The words stay with her as she stares at the screen, aware that the line between choice and pressure is thinner than it looks, and that stepping closer will only make that line harder to see. The conference room smells faintly of citrus cleaner and something metallic, the kind of neutral that makes emotions feel out of place. Lena sits with her hands folded, fingers pressed together to stop them from fidgeting, as the documents are arranged in front of her with deliberate care. Julian is across the table, jacket removed, sleeves rolled once, posture composed but not relaxed. The older attorney clears his throat and begins to outline terms in a voice that treats marriage like logistics. Lena listens, not to the words themselves, but to the spaces between them, the pauses where choices are supposed to exist. She is told the duration, 12 months, renewable only by mutual consent. She is told the compensation, structured, transparent, deposited monthly. She is told the boundaries, separate rooms, no physical obligations, no expectations beyond presence at specified events. Each clause lands like a stepping stone across deep water. She asks questions. She asks who controls the narrative if the press notices. She asks what happens if she wants out early. She asks whether there are penalties hidden in polite language. Julian answers himself, not deferring to the attorney, and his answers are precise, almost gentle. There will be no public statements without her approval. There will be an exit clause she can trigger unilaterally. There will be no penalties beyond confidentiality. He does not rush her. He does not soften the reality. He lets it be what it is. When the attorney slides the final page forward, Lena feels the weight of it settle, not fear exactly, but gravity. She thinks of her apartment ceiling, the water stain that grows when it rains. She thinks of the bus routes she has memorized, the way her life fits into small, predictable patterns. She thinks of the freedom she has guarded fiercely because it is the only thing that feels entirely hers. Julian watches her, not expectant, not pleading. He looks like someone prepared to accept any outcome without complaint. That steadiness makes her angry in a way she does not fully understand. She signs. The pen glides too smoothly. The sound it makes on paper is quiet, final. There is no kiss, no ring presented for effect. The attorney gathers the documents and leaves them alone. For a moment, neither speaks. Then Julian stands and offers. His hand, not possessive, not triumphant, simply acknowledging a change. Lena takes it. His grip is warm, brief. Welcome, he says, as if she has stepped into a room rather than an arrangement that will rearrange her life. The first event is that evening, a small board dinner, informal by their standards, formal by hers. There is no time for preparation beyond what is necessary. A stylist appears with clothes that fit without measuring, fabric soft against her skin, shoes that do not pinch. Lena notices how easily the world bends around him, how many people anticipate needs before they are voiced. At the dinner, she sits beside Julian, close enough to feel the heat of him, far enough to feel alone. Conversations swirl around investments and futures spoken of in percentages. When someone asks how they met, Julian answers simply, at a diner. He does not elaborate. He does not claim credit. He glances at her once, a question in his eyes. She nods, barely perceptible. The table accepts this. On the drive back, silence fills the car, not awkward, just present. Lena looks out at the city, lights blurring, and realizes the world has already begun to adjust its shape around them. At the apartment he has arranged for her, not shared, but adjacent, he walks her to the door. He tells her the schedule will be light at first. He tells her she can call him if anything feels wrong. He does not tell her what he needs. As he turns to leave, she asks one question she has been holding back. Why did you agree to all my conditions without negotiating? He stops. He considers. Because leverage only matters if the other person has none, he says. And I did not want you to feel that. He leaves her standing there, key heavy in her palm, the hallway quiet. Inside, the apartment is immaculate, impersonal, waiting to be lived in. Lena sets her bag down and exhales, the sound catching in her chest. She understands now that the contract was not the trap. The trap is proximity, the way lives begin to overlap without touching, the way choices made for practical reasons can start to feel personal. Somewhere between her signature and his restraint, a line has been crossed that cannot be uncrossed, and as she stands alone in a space that is safer than any she has known, she wonders what it will cost to keep herself intact in a world that has already decided she belongs in it. Life under the contract settles into a rhythm that is neither comfortable nor unbearable, which makes it harder to question. Lena wakes in a bed that is too large, sheets crisp in a way that feels borrowed, and for the first few seconds forgets where she is. Then the quiet reminds her. The apartment hums softly, climate-controlled, insulated from the city she used to hear through thin walls. She learns the building quickly, the way security nods without curiosity, the elevator that never smells like anyone else. Her schedule changes. She still works a few shifts at the diner because she asked to keep them, because she wanted proof that she could, but now a car waits when events run late, and groceries appear in her kitchen without receipts. Julian does not intrude. He sends schedules, not messages. He respects the rooms they agreed on, the lines they drew. When they attend events together, he never touches her unless necessary. A hand offered to steady her on stairs, fingers at her elbow through a crowd, contact brief and deliberate. People watch them anyway. Lena feels it in the way conversations slow, the way eyes assess, recalibrate. She practices neutrality, smiling when required, listening more than she speaks. Julian introduces her by name, not title, not possession. At night, When they return to separate doors in the same hallway, she tells herself this is easier than pretending intimacy. And yet, the small things begin to accumulate. He notices when she skips the canapes and arranges for something warm to appear beside her without comment. She notices he removes his watch before entering the apartment, as if shedding armor, and forgets it on the console, always face down. Once, during a late return, the elevator stalls between floors. The lights flicker. Lena feels her chest tighten, old panic rising uninvited. Julian does not rush her. He speaks quietly, grounding, naming the situation without minimizing it, until the doors open again. He never mentions it afterward. Another evening, she trips on a hem she did not choose, skinning her knee. He kneels without hesitation, presses a napkin to the blood, steady and efficient. The gesture is intimate without being personal. That unsettles her more than tenderness would have. She starts to learn his habits. He drinks coffee black, but only before noon. He reads contracts like other people read stories, anticipating turns. He sleeps little. Sometimes she hears him pacing late, footsteps measured, stopping, starting again. She wonders what keeps him awake and hates herself for wondering. At the diner, regulars ask questions she deflects with practiced ease. Her manager treats her differently now, deferential without knowing why. It makes her skin crawl. She buys new shoes, good ones, and feels guilty every time she ties them. The balance she wanted begins to tilt. One afternoon, Julian cancels an event last minute. The message is brief. He asks if she is free. She almost says no out of reflex, then says yes, because curiosity has been building quietly. He takes her to a charity site, a community kitchen preparing meals. There are no cameras. He wears a simple coat. He listens more than he speaks. He thanks volunteers by name. No one looks at him twice. Lena watches the ease with which he becomes unremarkable and realizes this might be the most honest version of him she has seen. On the drive back, he asks nothing of her, but she finds herself talking about the diner, about the way small kindnesses stack up until they matter. He listens. Later, she finds a note on her kitchen counter with a time for the next week, handwritten, not scheduled through assistants. It feels like an invitation rather than a requirement. The line between contract and choice blurs further. Then comes the first public test she did not anticipate. At a board reception, a woman addresses Lena with a smile too sharp, comments about upgrades and origins. The room stills. Julian does not intervene immediately. He lets Lena respond if she chooses. When Lena says nothing, he does not rescue her. He simply reframes the conversation, precise, respectful, redirecting attention without confrontation. The woman retreats. In the quiet after, Julian asks if she is all right. The question is simple. It lands hard. Back at the apartment, Lena stands in her doorway longer than usual. She realizes she is no longer counting days to the end date. She is counting moments, noticing shifts. This was supposed to be an arrangement built on boundaries. Instead, it is becoming a series of small decisions, each one reasonable, each one tightening the weave between them. She understands now that the danger was never the contract itself. It is the way two people can begin to rely on each other without naming it. How responsibility can masquerade as care, how proximity can make restraint feel like a choice rather than a rule. As she closes her door, she feels the pull of the space between them, quiet and charged, and knows that something is approaching, not dramatic, not announced, but inevitable, a moment that will demand more than composure, more than agreements, and force her to decide whether the life she is building can remain divided, or whether it will ask her to step fully into a role she did not plan to want. The night of the gala arrives without ceremony, folded into the calendar like another obligation, but Lena feels the shift hours before she leaves. The dress is understated, dark fabric, nothing that announces itself, chosen deliberately. Julian meets her in the hall, already composed, his expression unreadable in the way she has learned means focus rather than distance. The car ride is quiet. Outside the venue, cameras wait, flashes controlled but insistent. Julian places his hand at her back, steady, guiding without possession. Inside, the room hums with restrained power, conversations layered, laughter timed. Lena senses the familiar weight of being watched, assessed, and this time she does not pretend it does not touch her. The board members circulate, smiles practiced, questions indirect. She answers carefully, keeping her voice even, aware that every word lands somewhere. Then it happens, not loudly, not cruelly, but precisely where it can hurt. A senior partner addresses her with a tone that implies familiarity, congratulates Julian on his upgrade, wonders aloud how refreshing it must be to have someone so adaptable. The word hangs between them. Adaptable. The surrounding circle stills. Lena feels the heat rise in her chest, the old instinct to make herself smaller, to let it pass. Julian does not speak immediately. He looks at her first. It is not a warning. It is an opening. Lena realizes in that second that the choice is hers. She could laugh it off. She could retreat. She could let the moment dissolve. She does none of those things. She meets the man's gaze and says, calmly, that she did not come to be evaluated, and that adaptability is not the same as disposability. The silence deepens. Julian steps forward then, not to take over, but to stand beside her, shoulder to shoulder. He does not raise his voice. He says that Lena is here because he chose her, and that he does not choose based on convenience. He says her presence is not an accessory to his success, but a reflection of his values. The words are measured, undeniable. The circle breaks. Conversations resume, altered. The partner retreats, smile gone. Lena's hands shake only after, when they move away, when the adrenaline has nowhere to go. Julian leads her to a quiet corridor, away from the noise. He asks if she is all right. She nods, then shakes her head. She tells him it felt like standing on the edge of something and choosing not to step back. He listens. He does not tell her she was brave. He does not tell her she did well. He tells her he is glad she spoke, and that he would have supported her either way. The simplicity of it breaks something open. On the drive home, the city sliding past, Lena realizes this was the first time anyone with power had used it to make space rather than close ranks. At the apartment, neither moves toward their respective doors immediately. The hallway feels charged, quiet. Julian removes his watch, sets it down out of habit, then stops, as if noticing the ritual himself. He looks at her, really looks, and for the first time does not seem guarded. He tells her that moments like tonight are why the agreement exists, why appearances matter, and then he stops, as if the explanation feels insufficient. Lena surprises herself by saying that she understood, that she knew what she was stepping into, but that understanding does not make it easier. He accepts this without defense. They stand there, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to respect the line they drew. It would be easy to cross it. It would be easy to pretend this is where things turn into something else. Instead, Julian steps back. He thanks her, not for playing a role, not for enduring, but for being honest in a room that rewards silence. The door to her apartment clicks shut behind her, and Lena leans against it, breath uneven. She replays the moment in the circle, the way his voice sounded when he spoke her name, not as a shield, but as a statement. Something has shifted, irreversibly. This was not part of the contract. This was not negotiated. It was a choice made in public, a line drawn that cannot be erased. As she stands there, heart still racing, Lena understands that the arrangement has crossed into territory neither of them mapped out, and that the next challenge will not come from outsiders testing her worth, but from the question she has been avoiding, whether what is growing between restraint and respect can remain contained, or whether it will demand a truth neither of them has yet been willing to name. The night has changed the balance, and with it, the stakes, and somewhere in the quiet of the hallway, the future shifts again, closer now, waiting for the next move. The tension does not explode right away. It tightens. In the days after the gala, everything looks the same on the surface, the schedules arrive, the car waits, the apartment remains quiet and immaculate, but Lena feels the shift in the way Julian pauses before speaking, the way conversations end half a second sooner than they used to. She tells herself this is what happens when lines blur and people pull back to reassert them. She focuses on practical things. Groceries she now insists on choosing herself. A shift she picks up at the diner to feel the counter beneath her hands again. It is there, during a slow afternoon, that the first crack appears. A regular customer, kind but careless, congratulates her on the wedding he read about, mentions something about a clause that locked down Cross and Vale's controlling shares now that Julian is married. The words land wrong. Locked down. Controlling. Lena smiles, finishes the order, and feels a cold settle behind her ribs. That night, She does not go to bed. She opens the folder she asked to keep, the one with copies of everything she signed, and reads with a different eye than before, not for fairness, but for consequences. She finds it after an hour, buried in neutral language, a section she skimmed because it did not mention her directly. Marriage triggers stabilization clauses. Stabilization triggers extensions. Extensions require mutual consent, except in cases of material risk. The definition of material risk is broad. Too broad. Her name is not there, but the structure is. The realization is not dramatic. It is worse. It is quiet and precise. She understands then that the contract did not simply borrow her presence. It leveraged it. The next morning, she asks Julian for a meeting, not through assistants, but directly. He agrees immediately. They sit across from each other in the same conference room where it began. The air feels thinner. Lena does not raise her voice. She tells him what she found. She asks him if he knew. Julian does not deflect. He does not pretend surprise. He closes his eyes for a moment, a rare lapse, and then opens them. He says yes. He says the clauses existed before her, that he did not create them, but that he understood how marriage would activate them. He says he believed the exit provisions would be enough protection. Lena feels something harden. She tells him that believing is not the same as ensuring. She tells him that what he offered as choice came with invisible walls. Julian listens, jaw set, and when he speaks, his voice is steady but stripped of softness. He says the system he operates in does not allow for clean solutions, that every option comes with cost, that he chose the one that gave her the most agency he could. The words feel carefully constructed. Lena stands. She tells him that agency with conditions is not agency. She tells him that she did not agree to be a keystone in someone else's leverage. Julian rises too, instinctive, then stops himself, hands falling to his sides. He says quietly that he did not intend to trap her. The word hangs between them, heavy because it fits. Lena tells him intent does not erase impact. She says she feels acquired. She says she feels like an asset that walked itself into a balance sheet. Julian absorbs this without interruption, but something changes in his posture, a tightening, as if the criticism has found its mark. He says he will have the clauses revised. She asks how, when they benefit people who do not care about her consent. He has no immediate answer. The silence stretches. When he speaks again, he does not defend himself. He admits that he underestimated how it would feel to be on the other side of power he has navigated all his life. He says he thought transparency would be enough. Lena tells him transparency without protection is exposure. The meeting ends without resolution. In the hallway, they stand apart, the distance now deliberate. At the apartment that night, Lena packs a bag, not everything, just enough to assert movement. Julian watches from the doorway, expression controlled, and does not stop her. She tells him she needs space. He says he understands. The word sounds different now. As she leaves, she feels the weight of the choice, the pull of what they have built, and the clarity of what she cannot accept. This is the cost of stepping into someone else's world, she thinks, realizing too late that the most dangerous traps are not the ones that close suddenly, but the ones that feel like safety until you try to leave. Somewhere behind her, Julian stands alone in the quiet of a space designed for control, facing a truth he cannot negotiate away, that the person he tried to protect with structure is the one now showing him the limits of it, and that the next move will not be about power or strategy, but about whether he is willing to dismantle a system that has always served him, to free someone who no longer trusts that his restraint is enough. The decision Julian makes does not come with an announcement. It comes quietly, in rooms Lena does not see, with calls that do not include her name. She has taken a short-term sublet across town, smaller than her old place, but familiar in its resistance. Pipes that knock, neighbors that argue, a window that sticks. She returns to the diner full-time, the rhythm grounding, the work honest. People still look at her differently, some with curiosity, some with judgment, but the questions have faded into something manageable. She tells herself she is done with Julian's world. Then, one afternoon, her phone rings with a number she does not recognize. It is his attorney. The man sounds careful, almost subdued. He asks if she is willing to come in, not to discuss reconciliation, but to witness something. Lena considers hanging up. Instead, she asks what. The answer is simple and unsettling. A board meeting. She arrives to find the room fuller than she has ever seen it, tension sharp enough to taste. Julian stands at the head of the table, not seated, jacket on, watch absent. He does not look at her when she enters, but he knows she is there. The agenda moves quickly through numbers until it reaches the final item. Julian speaks then, voice steady, stripped of ornament. He announces the dissolution of the stabilization clauses tied to his marital status. The room reacts immediately, objections layered, consequences raised. He listens. He does not interrupt. When he responds, he does not frame it as generosity or sacrifice. He frames it as correction. He says leverage that requires consent obtained under imbalance is not leverage he will carry. He says if the board cannot operate without coercive structures, then his leadership is incompatible with their expectations. The word resign lands like a dropped object, heavy and final. Lena feels the room tilt. Julian does not look at her until the end, until the votes are called, until the outcome is clear. He has not won. He has chosen. Afterward, in the quiet of the corridor, he finally faces her. There is no triumph in his expression, only resolve and something like relief. He tells her the clauses are void. He tells her the contract between them is terminated in full. He does not ask for anything. He does not ask her to stay. He tells her he understands if she walks away now. The choice is real this time, unguarded. Lena feels the weight lift and replace itself with something heavier, responsibility without force. She tells him she needs time. He nods, accepts this without defense. Days pass. News breaks quietly, then louder, speculation filling gaps. Julian steps back from visibility. Lena watches from a distance, reading between lines, recognizing the cost he has chosen to bear. One evening, she finds him at the diner, sitting in a booth near the window, coat simple, posture familiar. He waits until she finishes her shift. They walk outside together, the street ordinary, unremarkable. He tells her he did not do it for her forgiveness. He did it because he could not unsee what she showed him. That control without care corrodes. That protection cannot be conditional. Lena listens. She tells him she does not know what comes next. He tells her neither does he. There is no promise offered. No claim made. They stand there, close but not touching, the city moving around them. For the first time, there is no contract shaping the space between them, no obligation defining their roles. The quiet is different now, open, uncertain. Lena feels the pull, the possibility, and the fear that comes with freedom. She tells him she will meet him for coffee tomorrow, not as his wife, not as his solution, but as herself. Julian accepts this with a nod, gratitude restrained. As she walks away, Lena realizes this is the quiet climax she did not expect, not a declaration, not a reunion, but a decision made visible through loss, a line crossed not toward possession, but away from it. Whatever comes next will be built without safety nets, without structures to hide behind, and that makes it fragile and real in a way nothing before ever was. The night closes in around them both, holding the space where something honest might finally begin, if neither of them flinches. Morning comes quietly, the kind that does not demand attention. Lena meets Julian at the coffee shop near the diner, the one with scratched tables and a bell on the door that rings too loudly. There are no cameras, no assistants waiting nearby, just 2 cups placed between them and the sound of traffic outside. They talk about small things first, the weather shifting, a recipe Lena wants to try, a book Julian started and did not finish. It feels awkward in a way that is honest. When the conversation turns heavier, it does so naturally. Julian tells her he has stepped back fully, that he is rebuilding without the protections he once relied on. He does not frame it as redemption. He frames it as learning. Lena listens and realizes she is no longer bracing herself. The tension that once sat between them has softened into something else, not certainty, but possibility. Over the next weeks, they meet again, not often, not on a schedule, but when it feels right. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for walks that end without conclusions. There is no rush. Lena keeps her job. Julian respects it. He does not offer solutions. He does not suggest upgrades. He shows up when he says he will, and leaves when the moment ends. One evening, after a long shift, Lena finds him waiting outside the diner, hands in his pockets, familiar now in his simplicity. He tells her he forgot his wallet. She laughs before she can stop herself. The memory lands softly between them. She pays for his coffee without thinking. He does not protest. They sit in the booth near the window, the same one from months ago. Julian slides a folded piece of paper across the table. It is not a contract. It is a lease offer for a small space above a closed bookstore, affordable, independent, no ties. He tells her she does not have to take it. He tells her he wanted to give her the option without conditions. Lena looks at the paper, then at him, and understands the difference. She says she will think about it. He nods. Outside, the city feels unchanged, and yet everything has shifted. Weeks later, Lena signs a different paper, this one for the space above the bookstore. Julian helps her move boxes, quietly, without directing. They paint the walls together, hands smudged, laughter unexpected. There is no declaration, no moment that announces what they are becoming. It happens in accumulation, in trust rebuilt through choice. One night, standing by the window, Lena asks him why he came back after everything. He considers. He tells her that power taught him how to take control, but she taught him how to give it up. He tells her that the day she ran after him with his forgotten wallet was the first time in a long while that someone saw him as a person rather than a position. Lena absorbs this, the weight of it, and understands that what they share now exists because neither of them tried to own it. The story does not end with a wedding or a promise. It ends with a routine, Julian stopping by the diner, Lena locking up her space at night, the two of them walking side by side without needing to define the distance. The marriage contract that once trapped them becomes a footnote, something they rarely mention. What remains is the lesson neither of them expected. That kindness, when offered without expectation, can disrupt systems built on control. That real partnership begins where power ends. And that sometimes the smallest choices, returning a wallet, speaking up in a room that prefers silence, walking away when it costs you comfort, are the ones that reshape a life. If this story stayed with you, if you found yourself in Lena's hesitation or Julian's restraint, take a moment to reflect on the quiet choices you make every day. They matter more than you think. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about power softened by humanity and love built through action rather than words, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need the reminder that real change often begins in the smallest, most human moments.